again to my workshop. Today we're going to be talking about welding. Now this video is being produced in conjunction with the build of the large MAXI CNC router, and has come about from requests in the comment section and through patrons that I give some demonstration of how to weld. Well, hopefully I'm going to do a little bit more than that. So in your home workshop there is about 3 cost-effective ways of welding, and the first one, and probably the cheapest one, is what is known as a stick welder or a rod welder. Now this is a welding rod or an arc welding rod. I'll just bring it a bit closer to the camera there. Now hopefully you can pick that number up on there. Bit difficult. Now this particular grade of rod is a 60-1-3. Now what that means is it's a general purpose mild steel rod, okay, ready fluxed. Now the number 60-1-3, you can either have 60-1-0, okay, through to 60-1-3. Now that's a general mild steel welding rod, which is good for normal type of along welding, or vertical up welding, or even vertical down welding, or even overhead welding. Now I wouldn't advise anybody to start off with overhead welding. That is quite a difficult one to master, but for the type of welding that we need to do is just simple joint welding for this build, and it will help you out a lot. Now this type of stick welding is not suitable for any material, any gauge material, okay, thickness, under probably 3/16 of an inch. You know, when you get down to 1/16 of an inch or car body panel, this, you know, you need to be an absolute expert using a stick welder, because otherwise you're just going to burn holes straight through. It's a very, very difficult task. There are other welding methods that is more suitable for car body welding and things like that, and that would be a MIG welder. And there is 2 forms of MIG welders, but we will come to that. Now the type of welder, this is a general purpose, low cost, about $150 to $200. Most hardware stores sell them. In my case in Australia is Bunnings, and you'll see the name on here, Ozito. That's I think it's like a home brand name. Very reasonably priced, $180 I think I paid. This is a 140 amp welder. Now on a household 240 circuit you wouldn't have anything larger than this, okay. 140 amps is the maximum. You'd need a dedicated high ampage circuit. I think this is 15 amp draw off the power, which is, you know, you use it in your workshop, because normally a 15 amp circuit at 220 volts Okay, what the definition would be at 110 volts, I'm really not sure. But I think most workshops these days do have a 220 volt outlet somewhere in the workshop. Now you have a negative, which is either connected to your metal welding bench. This is a purpose welding bench. So then you have the torch end where the rods stick in, and the fairly good torch is that they have like an angled grip in there that you just get your welding rod, open the trigger, pop it in, and it'll grasp it. Now, I have been using welders for 50 years, giving my age away now. Now, what I have found is that to do stick welding, or MIG welding for that matter, you need to be as comfortable as possible. Now, if I can, I will sit down and weld. Okay? And another thing to make it comfortable for your wrist, because otherwise you end up getting cramp in your wrist if you do it any length of time, is halfway down the length of your rod, bend it like so. Now I was lucky, I was taught well by some experts, and it's paid off in spades. But I must stress that I am not a professional welder, so some of the things you see me do might be some, I suppose if you're a purist, might be a couple of bad habits, but they work for me. So, and this is one of those little tricks that I've learnt over the years. So, comfortable. Any means that you have to do to make yourself comfortable, well, this is it. Now, this control here, this knob in the middle, controls a variable amperage supply. In here is a big transformer, okay, and this you're physically winding the central core in and out, and that adjusts the amount of amperage that's coming out here. Okay, now the amperage required for this gauge of rod, and this is 2.6 millimeters, which is just it's nearly 1/8 of an inch, nearly, is about between 85 and 90 amps. Okay, on the unit. Bear in mind, the maximum output is 140. So for this gauge, okay, about 85 amps, somewhere around there. You can only tell by when you start welding how the weld is going, whether you need a little bit more or a little bit less. If it's, we'll come to that later on in the video. So another thing I'll show you is, now this is a general purpose welding rod, okay, and this is for mild steel. Now all of the different alloys of steel, right, may require a different grade of welding rod, okay. So this is just for mild steel, and that's pretty well all I weld around here. Before we go any further, there is quite a bit of safety issues with welding. Now I'm sure you will appreciate that molten steel on your bench is between 1,800 and 2,000 degrees centigrade. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but it's hot as, it's as hot as lava, pretty well. So it's pretty dangerous stuff. Not only that, okay, you have to wear I would advise wear a full face mask. Now this is an electronic one. They're very cheap. They're about $100. When I say electronic, you can see through this. It's just opaque. Okay, so you can see through it quite well. So you don't have to, you know, keep taking it off to see where you're putting the end of the rod. And for a learner, I would suggest, you know, get one. Same time as you buy one of these, get one of these. Okay, you shouldn't have to pay any more than about $100 for this. It just saves you. It gives you two hands, and you don't have to keep on moving the mask away, bringing it in, and using one hand to do the welding. Because sometimes I actually support my other hand, the hand that holds the torch, with my left hand. Okay, that's a very useful thing to do, because you are working in a very small confined area. So when you're welding, what you are trying to do, if you notice the center part is slightly domed in. This is one that I just used. So what you're going to be doing is, first of all, to strike the arc. Okay, so you just, when it's switched on, you just stroke and tap like this. And what you're actually doing is breaking off the flux at this end here, so the metal nearly comes into contact with this metal here, and it will spark, and immediately start sparking. You just draw it away about between 1/16 of an 1/8 of an inch. And then what you do is, once you've got a pool of molten steel going here, you move along or progress in a C-shape motion like this, drawing back ever so slowly. You'll be able to see through the lens of the mask the pool of steel, and you don't actually dip into it. You just hover over top of it, and you do these like C-shape or crescent moon shapes, and you just work your way along and keeping the distance between 1/16 of an 1/8 of an inch, which is 1 to 2 millimeters. Okay, now if you draw it away too far, you'll find that it gets very, very bright and it'll start to spit, and that means you're actually making it too hot. That's why it's spitting. So you've got to get a sort of a happy medium of about 1/16 of an inch, a millimeter, hovering over the area where you were actually doing the run then. So we'll do a run, and I'm going to swap cameras because I've got the other one set up with a green lens. Okay, so you can see here the ridges in the run or weld run that the C movement then with the rod is, you know, this is the classic ridges of a weld. Now I did a bead here and you can see there's no penetration here. This was done because the amperage was not up high enough. You remember me saying very earlier on that you need about 85 or so. Well, this was set at 80 amps. This is set at 90 amps. It's got good flow and good penetration. You see the weld is stood up on top of the material here, but in this example you can see in the edges it's just etched the material away very, very slightly, and there's not, well, there is splatter here, but you're going to get splatter with stick welding whatever you do. You can minimize that, but there are sprays that you can get to spray the steel before you start welding, but I never really used that myself. So you can see you can do a successful weld run. After all, that's what this is. It's just a weld run. But this is the way that you practice welding. You know, when you get to a stage where you can weld like this, it's not perfect, but it's not a bad weld either. It's got all the elements of a satisfactory weld. So when you get to this stage and you are proficient then at doing a run in steel, then is the time that you progress to actually welding a joint, which is what we're going to do next. Not a bad weld. Could have been prettier, but not a bad weld. So you can see the sort of segment moon movements within the weld, and that movement just helps the metal to flow from one piece of material to the other and flow into the middle of the weld to make a very good joint. There's nothing really hard about it. It's just knowing or having some idea of what to do and practice. You know, you just don't go buying something like this and hooking it up and getting your two bits of metal and putting it together like chewing gum. Probably wouldn't be a very good weld. You've got to practice. And thank you for joining me, and well, until next time, bye for now.